Anon, the long-distance lover. I met my first love at 11 years old when I was living in the Philippines. We got together at 12, but then broke up when my family moved to Ireland. At 15, we wrote letters to each other and got back together again and stayed together for the next 5 years. Not a happy ending, though. He ended up cheating on me. I also have to add that I wasn't allowed to have a boyfriend because my parents were very strict, so it was a lot of sneaking around and asking my cousins for help so we could meet up. Danielle, the check yes or no. My first love was a boy named John in elementary school. I thought he was the cutest boy in all of the 5th grade. I would try to play with him through recess and talk to him in class, but he just wouldn't give me the time of the day. One day, I was brave enough to write him a letter, literally a Dear John letter. I asked one of his friends if they could give it to him and they did. I remember standing on the other side of the playground, waiting for him to read the letter, and I watched him take the letter and throw it in the garbage. I was devastated. My little 11-year-old heart was broken and I vowed to never speak or look at him ever again. Roughly 10 years later, a group of us contacted each other on Facebook and decided to meet up for a reunion. I saw John again for the first time after nearly a decade and we made up for lost time, catching up with each other and what we had been up to after high school. We dated briefly after that, but it didn't work out. We were both in different places mentally. Although we are both parents now and just Facebook friends, I still consider him my first love and my first heartbreak. Megan, the brace-locking romance. My first love was this boy Josh who dated all my friends. It was a very Pen 15 situation. Finally, it was my turn to be his girlfriend. So, one night when my father was sleeping, we snuck out to the roof of my apartment building and kissed. It was my first kiss. Of course, being that we were both 13 years old, when we kissed our braces locked and we couldn't separate ourselves from each other. We were stuck together. By the time we separated, my dad and the super busted us on the rooftop. I was grounded for a week, but still snuck phone calls to my first love in the bathroom at night and sat with him at lunch until he dated someone else. I knew because he sent her a note in homeroom. Young love is hard. Lisa, the short king. My first love was named Joey, and he lived around the corner from me. We grew up together and we always had a mutual flirtation. When we started middle school, he asked me out on a date. Finally. I had a growth spurt really early on and by the time I was 13, I was really tall. He hadn't had his yet, and was 4 inches shorter than me. But that didn't matter to me. When we went out on our first date, the usher made me buy an adult movie ticket for myself and a child ticket for him. Now, the reason why they made me buy the ticket is because they thought that I was his mother or older sibling because I was so much taller than him. Anyway, I was totally humiliated because it ruined the vibe. But, that didn't stop us from dating for the next 2 years. Alicia, the spoiled salad love. I had a date with my crush in junior high school. We were going to hang out at the local arcade. Before I went, I was eating dinner with my family and I shook a container of salad dressing and the whole thing exploded all over my hair and my outfit. I tried to shower and change my clothes, but I still smelled like Italian salad dressing. The whole time we were out he was asking me if I smelled what he was smelling. I said no. Needless to say, we never went out again because I smelled like a salad on our first date. Jess.
Love short story. My first love. I was just 13 years old when I fell in love with a boy 4 or 5 years older than me. It was the most ecstatic feeling and I still cannot get over it. As they say, when a woman falls in love, she can never fall in love again, although I was a teenager then, but I still have vivid memories of that boy and how I felt for him. I was a smart, bubbly and a cute little teenager, who enjoyed life and was living life to the fullest, when suddenly life changed for me. I had set my eyes on him the first time when he had come to the Colony Park and he was chatting with his friends. I found him so handsome, his curly, dark brown hair and large dark brown eyes. I was floored. Though now when I look back, I laugh it off as mere infatuation, but I don't know why I felt an instant connection with him. When he looked into my eyes, my heart fluttered and I used to feel so nervous and excited at the same time. You won't believe it, but I never spoke to him. But still I felt a strong connection to him. He was so handsome and so good looking, that whenever I used to look at him I could not stop myself from staring at him, and he hardly bothered to even turn around and look at me. For him I was insignificant as I was much smaller than him, therefore he hardly even tried to take any interest in me. Each day when I used to go to the park I used to do up my hair differently and wear my best of dresses to look nice lest he spots me there, but every day he used to be so engrossed in chatting and playing with his friends that he hardly took notice of me. I was so mad after him that I used to stand in the balcony for hours on end, just to get a glimpse of him, and sometimes I used to keep peeping out of the window, so that I could see him playing in the park, but I would spot him only a few times. Rest of the times I would just sadly retreat to my studies or doing some other work. As days passed things remained the same when slowly and gradually he started noticing that I stare at him all the time, when I am around him, in the park or in any shop nearby. Once I remember I was standing in the neighborhood bakery and he suddenly walked in with his friends, probably to buy something. I turned around and as usual started staring at him, and he was standing opposite me when suddenly a lot of people came in between us, and it was a funny situation and I could see just one half of his face and I caught him staring at me with one eye. I was shocked as it was so sudden, and the depth with which he was staring at me cannot be explained in words. There was admiration and tender love in them. I then left the bakery feeling very shy. Until now I cannot forget that look of his in the bakery. Another time I felt very shy was when we both passed each other when I was coming back from school. We were walking on the side of the road and he suddenly saw me walking down the road, swaying my bag along my side. He was chatting with his friend, and when I passed him, I stopped swaying my bag and I quietly tried to pass him, and then he turned around and looked fondly at me. I walked away feeling shy and embarrassed at the same time. Anytime I came in direct contact with him and whenever he looked at me I always felt a soft tenderness in his eyes and the warmth of his heart touched me deep inside. This boy was very tall and fair and had the loveliest hair and a very smart moustache, and whenever I looked at him I went weak in my knees. I used to dream of him being near me and talking to me and we spending time with each other, but I could never muster enough courage to ever stand in front of him and talk to him. I was too small and too naive to even think of it. Things went on in this way for a few months and nothing happened till one fine day when he smiled at me. Just imagine, my Prince Charming smiled at me. Finally he took notice of me, and I must tell you, it was the most beautiful smile I had ever seen. I was coming back from school one evening and he was sitting on his bike and waiting for his friend. He saw me coming and when I passed him he did not do anything, but when I went a little further and turned around as I heard some noise behind me and I looked at him, he smiled at me. I was too shocked to respond in any way. I turned around and went to my home. I did not know what to do, but I was mesmerized by his first smile. It was so sudden that I was at a loss of words as to what should my next step be, but fate had other plans for me. Just imagine my bad luck, that when I could think of having a relationship with him, as he had finally acknowledged my presence and smiled at me, I had to go. I had to leave the city for good. My father was transferred to another town and I had to leave the very next day. I had to travel all alone, as my father had arranged for school admissions in that town, and so I had to leave. I could have had a beautiful relationship with this boy whose name also I did not know. I don't know till now whether it was love at first sight with him or was it infatuation, but one thing I must say, and that is, that I will never forget him ever and all that I felt for him. Certainly it was my first love, whether it was infatuation or not I don't know. But it was my first experience of any exposure to the opposite sex, and you won't believe it that I could never like any other person ever in my life after that, other than my husband. First love is like a fresh blooming flower in the morning sunlight. It is like the first most memorable fragrance you might have smelt in your entire life. It is the most wonderful feeling anyone can ever have, and those of you who are reading this story might feel that I am crazy as I am calling my first crush to be my first love. But only I know how I felt when I was around him and when he looked into my eyes. It was the most ultimate feeling I have ever had in my life. It is unforgettable and I still cherish those tender feelings I had for him. All of those among who have such first loves or crushes as mine will very well understand what I am talking about, and when their love does not reach any culmination then they will also feel the same way that I am feeling. Whenever I feel very lonely and lost I think of him and I ask God that why he did not unite me with him. Why am I subjected to such misery of losing my love at such a tender age? Although I am happy in my present life, but when I think of him I cannot console myself. Anyways, those are ways of God, no one can question them, but again I want to reiterate that that was my first love and I will never forget it ever. End.
Unexpected end to a short story. Knowing very well that Chandani was affected with heart problems, great care was taken to break the news of her husband, Slok's death, as softly as possible by her sister Nina. Nina uttered the news in broken sentences, camouflaging the hints in a half-concealed manner. Chandani, you know what? Be calm and brave, my dear little sis. Slok is not in our midst now, told Nina, hugging her sister tightly. Nidin, Chandani's husband's friend, the bearer of this tragic news, was also there trying to console and provide support to Chandani. News of an accident which had happened in the wee hours of today morning near the outskirts of Pune was flashed as breaking news over the TV a couple of hours ago. Slok's name was seen at the top of the list of those killed in the accident. Shocked on seeing the news, it was Nidin who had gone to the nearby newspaper office to doubly confirm the news. He hurried to prevent any less considerate and less assiduous friend to be the bearer of this sad message to Chandani, for whom he had a special sisterly affection. Chandani did not receive the news, as did several other women with an immobilized inability to accept its gravity. No, not my Slok, so saying Chandani broke down at once, with instantaneous and wild abandonment in Nina's arms. With the storm of grief having subsided gradually, Chandani slowly climbed the stairs leading to her room, and it was clear from her body language that she would be like to be left alone and have no one follow her. Please leave me alone, she implored, and burst out suddenly, why has this happened to me, oh my God? She stood there in her room, staring at the wide-open window, and sank into a wide and comfortable roomy single sofa. Chandani appeared fully drained and held down by immense mental and physical fatigue that captivated her body, that seemed to engulf her soul as well. She was motionless except when a sob escaped her throat and shook her violently. She looked like a child who cries itself uncontrollably when put the child to sleep and continues this sobbing in its dreams too. All of a sudden Chandani arose as though awakened from a bad dream. She could feel the delicious breath of rain that was pervading the atmosphere. In the Patel street just opposite her house she could hear a peddler announcing his wares for sale at the top of his shrill voice. The notes of a popular Hindi song of the 1960s which someone was singing reached her ears somewhat faintly. Oh, I can now hear my favorite Lataji song waiting through the air, thought she. Hearing countless birds chirping in the nearby patch of shady trees, she felt a bit calm and composed. Through the large window could be seen patches of blue sky scattered here and there wafting through the passing clouds. Chandani, the young fair lady, was one who wore a calm face, the lines of which bespoke suppression and some toughness as well. The face had a different expression now, as there was this dull stare that shone in her eyes, whose gaze was concentrated far away towards one of the patches in the clear blue sky. It was not a glance of reflection, but rather indicated a suspension of astute and brilliant thought. Her intuition could sense something coming towards her, and she waited for it with a bated breath. What could it be? She just could not understand. She did not know, it was too indistinctive and evasive to define. But she could feel it creeping through the sky, coming towards her through the various sounds, fragrances, and colors which engulfed the air. Her chest rose and fell vociferously. She started becoming conscious of the unknown that was advancing towards her to take control of her, and she strived hard to resist this force with her resolve, which proved to be as vulnerable as her two white lean hands. Finally, when she abandoned herself, a small whisper word escaped her somewhat parted lips. She repeatedly pronounced the word in a soft tone, I am free, free, free. The empty stare and the terrified look that had followed it disappeared from her eyes, and they appeared to be bright and zestful now. She could hear her pulse beating fast and the blood racing through her body, which warmed and eased her entire body. She did not once question herself as to whether or not it was this beastly joy which held her. A plain and rhapsodic perception made her dismiss this suggestion as insignificant. Yes, she was totally aware that she would weep and break down once she seized the masculine hands of Slok folded in death, the face that had never glanced, save with loving and tender eyes, but which many a time cast a gray and dead stare at her. But beyond all this disgruntled moment, she could visualize a long procession of future years that would be solely hers. With open arms she was all set to welcome this freedom which she felt was missing during her years wedded to Slok. Yes, she would just live for herself in the years to come. It was a strange feeling of apprehension and joy, and she felt butterflies in her stomach. This intention of hers, whether kind or cruel, made the act look no less a crime as she looked at it in that brief moment of luminescence. There would be no powerful imposing authority above her in that blind obstinacy with which women and men believe they have a private legal entitlement to impose upon their spouses. But, yet it could not be said that she did not love him. Yes, at times. It was a love and hate relationship between them. It did not matter much now. What could this feeling of love, the baffled mystery, be, when compared to this custodian of self-declaration which she suddenly realized as the strongest urge of hers at the present moment? I am born free again. My body and soul are free, she kept repeating in a hushed tone. On the other side of the room's closed door, Nina was banging the door and kneeling, with her lips pressed against the keyhole, begging Chandani to open the door and let her in. Chandani, my dear sister, please open the door, I beg of you, little sis of mine, we want to see you. Please listen to me, we are here for you. You are our little princess. Don't torture yourself. We are worried. What is it that you are doing, Chandani Gudiya? Please, please, we want to see you. For heaven's sake, open the door and let us in. Go away, Nana Didi. Don't you worry about me. I am not going to harm myself. Be rest assured. Her thoughts were running riot. How will Nina ever understand me? Nobody can guess my feelings now. Here I am drinking in the elixir of life and enjoying my newfound freedom through the wide-open window, gazing at the wonderful azure sky. Soon her mind started racing uncontrollably over those days that were yet to come. Rainy days, summer days, and winter days, and all other types of days would be hers and hers alone. She uttered a quick prayer asking God to grant her a very long life. It was just yesterday that she thought with a shiver about the long life which she might have to live with Slock. Chandani stood up at length and opened the door, hearing her sister's entreaties, which became louder and louder. Her eyes displayed a maniacal triumph, and she carried herself involuntarily like Nike, the goddess of victory in Greek mythology. She wrapped her hands around her sister's waist and, fully leaning against Nina, both the sisters gradually descended the staircase. Nidin stood at the bottom of the staircase, totally disturbed and devastated by the recent happenings. Suddenly everyone turned their gaze towards the door. Someone was trying to open the main front door with a latch key. Who could it be? Perhaps Slock's parents or some close friend, thought they. Behold, what a sight! It was Slock who entered the house, in a crumpled t-shirt and a somewhat soiled pant. Carrying his small suitcase and an umbrella, he looked travel-stained and had obviously missed the bus by a few minutes, as the auto rickshaw in which he was traveling to catch his bus was held in heavy traffic and could not make it on time to board the bus. He looked dazed and totally unaware of the tragedy which had struck the bus which he was supposed to have boarded. He was far from the scene of the accident and totally clueless about the tragic happening. He stood bewildered and amazed on hearing Nina's ear-piercing cry, and at Nidin's shocked look, Chandani's eyes met with that of Slock's, and suddenly she collapsed and was rushed to the nearby hospital. On admission she was pronounced dead due to cardiac arrest. Why? Is it due to the crashing of her future dreams, or the beginning of her bad times once again, or is it something else, sudden joy that proved to be a killer? It is left to the reader's imagination, E&D.
Storytime about how I stole my best friend's boyfriend and she ended up poisoning me. Disclaimer, is not my story time. It's on my Instagram. I met my ex-best friend 10 years ago. We hit it off right away in school and were inseparable. But shortly into our friendship, I noticed how jealous and envious she was. She envied my life and everything that I had. I got lots of attention from boys and she didn't. Every time we would go out, I was the one constantly getting hit on. It actually made me feel so bad for her. I stopped dressing up whenever we would hang out, and I even stopped wearing makeup just to make her feel better. She asked me if I was doing that on purpose, and I told her no. I told her I just wanted to feel more natural and that it had nothing to do with her. But this actually started working. That's when she started borrowing my clothes and my makeup. She didn't even know how to use makeup, so I would do it for her. Every single weekend that we would go out, she would look really amazing. I would do her makeup and her hair and dress her up up before we went out. Usually I would go in jeans and a t-shirt and not do anything to my hair or my face. But like I said, I only did this when I would go out with her. Whenever I went out with other friends, I would always look my best. But it actually started to work. Instead of me getting hit on at the bars and clubs, she would get hit on. And this made her feel so much better. And it actually made me really happy too. She started going on a few dates, and she had really good guys interested in her. One of the guys was in financing, owned a house, and traveled a lot, and was good looking too. The other one owned his own business, was good looking, really tall, and wanted kids right away. He would basically tell her that he wanted to marry her. But instead of being interested in them, she wanted to date more guys. She became a serial dater. Before I knew it, every single weekend I would go to her house to help her get ready for her dates, which by the way would take me 2 to 3 hours to do her hair, makeup, and outfit. But like I said, I was happy to help her. On one occasion, I told her I couldn't come over to do her makeup and her hair because I had a date of my own. She told me I was ungrateful and hung up the phone on me. I was shocked by her behavior. While I was on my date, she called me 10 times. When I answered, she demanded to know where I was. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how I stole my best friend's boyfriend and she ended up poisoning me. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. After I see her 10 missed calls while I was on my date, I finally call her back. And when I answered, all she asked me was where I was. I told her I was on my date and that I couldn't talk. That's when she told me that she would just bring the makeup to where I was so that I could help her do her makeup for her date. I was so angry that I decided to defend myself. I told her she was being a brat and super ungrateful. Then I told her I was gonna hang up on her and not talk to her for the next few days. I decided to turn off my phone for the rest of the night. Finally, a few days later, I decided to call her. That's when she gives me a half-ass apology telling me she shouldn't have done that and that she was acting like a brat. That's when I told her I didn't want to do her makeup and hair every single weekend. She said she would learn how to do her own makeup if I could just teach her. So of course, I agreed. After that, things got way better between us. She actually ended up becoming girlfriend with one of the guys, the one that was the business owner. She insisted that we do a double date. So I ended up having a date come with me to dinner with them. We were having fun up until my best friend started getting really drunk. This is when she just started acting out. She started telling the guys about how much I would get hit on and about all the dates I've been on, about how many sexy time partners I had. I mean, this is girl code. You do not talk about exes or guys that your girlfriend is dating to her boyfriend or date. I was so angry with her. Her boyfriend looked at me, apologized, and said that he would take her home. So my date and I decided to stay at the restaurant and finish our dinner. Then I get a message from my best friend's boyfriend apologizing on her behalf. He asked me if he could call me on the phone and we talked for an hour. Part 2 is up. Part 3 of how I stole my best friend's boyfriend and she ended up poisoning me. Disclaimers are not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. My BF's boyfriend called me. He apologized for my best friend's behavior while she was drunk. I told him that I would talk to her whenever she was sober. Before I knew it, he and I had been on the phone for a full hour. He was making me laugh so much and we were having such a great conversation. We finally got off the phone and I literally had butterflies in my stomach. And I started thinking about him differently. I mean, I knew that he was my best friend's boyfriend, but he was being so nice. And he was successful and funny and good looking. That's when I decided to cut my best friend off. I stopped answering her texts and phone calls. One day she showed up at my house asking me if I could help her get ready for another date. I told her that I didn't want to be her friend anymore and basically slammed the door in her face. She kept calling me to apologize and eventually I accepted. But her boyfriend and I didn't stop texting. I started to realize that I was falling for him, so I decided to tell him that I had feelings and that we shouldn't talk anymore. That's when he told me that he had feelings for me too. All this while I would still hang out with my best friend every single weekend. She would bring me food and make us drinks while she was at my place. I started feeling different symptoms after a few weeks. I would get these really bad headaches and I just felt sick all the time. I decided to go to the doctor and they couldn't find anything. One day her boyfriend calls me and tells me that he really wants to see me. He comes over to my house and we kissed. He told me that he wanted to break up with her to be with me. I couldn't resist and I said yes. When we confronted her, she said that she had seen our messages already. She called me a bunch of names and told me that she had been poisoning me. First I didn't believe her, but then I went and got tested and it was true. I haven't spoken to her since and I don't know if I should tell the cops. Him and I are still together. What should I do?
After 16 years of being poor, I finally became rich. Hi, my name is Lindsay and I submitted this story. Growing up, I always had this strange obsession with money. I always wanted to figure out ways to make money, how to save money. I even wanted to learn investing, but my parents said it was too advanced for me at the time. Kids had always made fun of me saying I was adopted and poor. I had blonde hair and brown eyes. Meanwhile, my parents had brown hair and blue eyes. We didn't really have much funds. My mom and dad were both living paycheck to paycheck and tried their best to support me and them. And my dad was attending college for being a lawyer at the same time, so we had that debt as well. But around my 16th birthday, I got a letter in the mail. It was lettered to me and it said happy birthday. I started reading it and I was in absolute shock. The letter in fact confirmed that I was adopted, and it was my real mother messaging me. She said it was illegal for me to do this, so I kept it a secret. I never asked my parents if I was adopted, so I decided to do it today. I hid the letter under my pillow and went downstairs and asked them, was I adopted? And their faces were insane. Make sure to follow. I'm in love with him, but my Muslim parents don't approve, part 1. When I was around 5 years old, I met this boy, let's call him Henry. Henry was black. and he was in a really big family. Me and him were always at the hip, and we've been friends now for about 11 years. I'm now 15 in high school and he's 16. I've had this undeniable crush on him. All of my friends know, I know, he knows probably, his friends know, and he has a mutual crush on me. So he decided to ask me out, and I agreed. So around this time, prom came around, and I dressed up for prom, and my parents were so excited to see my date. So when they opened the door and he was my date, they looked so disappointed, and they looked mad. It made me and my boyfriend Henry actually pretty insecure, but we ignored it and went to the school dance and continued to enjoy ourselves. When I came home, I got the yell of my life. My mom said, "Fatima, you cannot marry that boy." I asked her why, and you will not believe what she said. It was extremely racist. Come back for part 2.
After 16 years of being poor, I finally became rich, part 2. So I asked both parents if I was adopted, and they gave me a disgusting look on my face. My mother said, "Lindsay, stop asking such obnoxious, annoying questions and go back to your room." She was extremely snappy for I don't know what reason. She was never like this. So I decided to dig a little deeper. I actually wrote back to the person who was my so-called birth mother and asked her if she had any social media that I could contact her off of. About 3 days later, she wrote back giving me her phone number. And so I began texting her. I asked for a picture of her and I looked just like her. She had blonde hair and brown eyes just like me. She sent me a picture of my so-called father as well. He had brown eyes and blonde hair as well. I was in shock. I continued texting her and I wanted to meet up with her one day. But then she mentioned she had a daughter that went to the same school as me. And the only girl I could think of was one of the rich, popular mean girls of the school. Her name was Regina. So one day I was staring at her in class. She gave me a dirty look and you would not believe what she said. Come back for part 3. After 16 years of being poor, I was finally rich. So one day I was staring at Regina in class and she said, "What are you looking at, loser?" A bunch of her friends behind her laughed. One of the guys had said this, "You guys actually look pretty similar, I'm not gonna lie. You both have the same nose and eyebrow shape, it's kinda creepy." She then said, "Shut up, no we don't. Don't you ever compare me to that loser ever again." And everyone just joked around with him and came after him, like in a joking way. I just gave her a dirty look and looked away. After that, I decided to stalk her Facebook a little bit. People typically post family photos there and stuff. And I looked for what her mom looked like, and I kid you not, she was standing next to my mom. And her mom was my mom as well. But how was I going to break the news to her? How would she take it? Would she be accepting of finally having a sister, or would she sit here and call me crazy? Would it break off the communication me and my so-called birth mother have? I wasn't sure, but I decided to take a risk anyways. I went up to Regina and asked her if we could talk in private. But she said I could say whatever I needed to say in front of her friends. Come back for part. After 16 years of being poor, I was finally rich, part 5. I explained to Regina that I'm her sister in front of her friends, and she laughed. She said, "There's no way a loser like you could be my sister. You're insane. Get away from me." And they all just laughed and I walked away. So for the next week, I continued texting our mother, and she actually invited me over for dinner. She gave me the house address, and I went to her house, and she had a huge mansion. It was insane. She showed me a car and a college tuition fund, and she had all of that waiting for me for when I was older. And she said I could live with her. I went inside and saw Regina's face, and she was shocked. Now I live there. Regina eventually warmed up to me, but everything is fine now. I'm now enjoying being rich. Follow for more story time.
Am I the asshole for complimenting a cashier? My sister thinks I'm the asshole, but I'm confused on how I could be. I was buying a bagel on Thursday and noticed the cashier was rather pretty. She had tattoos, so she was probably at least 18, and she looked around 19 or 20. I completed my order and said, "You know you're gorgeous, right?" To my shock, she gave me a blank stare and looked kind of disgusted. I tried to make conversation with her as I own both and asked her if she's ever been on one. She said, "You're done with your order, right? I think we're done here." She didn't even say thank you and gave me a nasty look. I don't think my compliment was crude or nasty, and her reaction was shocking. My sister said it was weird to give that kind of compliment considering I'm 58, but I wasn't flirting with her.
So when I was a sophomore in high school, I had this teacher who would only let the students in her class use the restroom one time per semester. Well, one day I raised my hand and I was like, "Excuse me," I don't remember her name, "can I please use the restroom?" And she was like, "No, you can't, because you've already used the restroom in my class this semester." Well, excuse me, you can't dictate my bladder. So I'm like all frustrated, and I started secretly texting my mom because I wasn't allowed to use my phone in class. And I was like, "Mom, I'm sitting in class right now, my teacher won't let me use the restroom." And she was like, "I'll take care of it for you." And I was like, "Okay." So like 5 minutes goes by, and all of a sudden my teacher's phone starts ringing, and she walks up to it and answers it, and she's like, "Hello?" "Yeah. Okay, thank you." And then she walks up to me like so angry, and she like slams the pass on my desk, and she was like, since you have to go that bad. And I was like, yeah, I really do, thanks. And I got up and left. I didn't even have to go to the bathroom. It was just the principle of it. I just roamed the halls. My daughter Savannah is the CEO of faking illness to get out of school. So when she does not feel like being there, she will go to the nurse's office and complain to them that she is really not feeling good so that they call me and I have to go get her. Well, one day after this happens, I walk into the administrative office and everybody is really concerned because Savannah is sitting in a chair like so dramatically like, hi, Mom. And like when I saw her, I burst out laughing. I was like, oh my God, are you okay? And everybody looked at me like I was some really bad mom. Like, oh my God, why aren't you more concerned? But as we were walking out, she was walking really slow and actually didn't look good. So even I was a little concerned. I was like, oh my God, honey, are you okay? Until we got to the car when Savannah looks at me and goes, you know what, Mom? I feel better now. And I was like, Savannah, are you serious? And she's like, Mom, do you maybe want to go to Starbucks and have like a girls' day? And I was like, honey, what kind of question is that? You know I do.
This is why you should always lock your doors. A class was playing a game of Kahoot when they heard a voice on the intercom say, "This is not a drill. Go into lockdown." The students huddled in the back of the classroom and then the power went off. Minutes later, the students heard the sound of a man screaming at the top of his lungs, running down the hallway. The lunatic man started banging on the lockers and his screams gradually got louder. He then started banging on the classroom window, yelling, "Open up." He eventually left, and 10 minutes later, a voice on the intercom said, a mentally ill person had entered the school and attacked the lady at the front desk. The staff did a sweep of the school and still couldn't find him, so they locked the doors and resumed class. Later that night, one of the janitors went into the utility closet when this happened.
This is why you should never explore abandoned ships. In 2014, the US Navy decided to decommission one of its oldest ships, so it brought it into port to be broken down for scrap. Before workers were allowed to actually start breaking it down, the foreman had to go on board and take pictures of every room. So late one night, the foreman spends about an hour walking through this abandoned ship with a flashlight, taking about 100 pictures. When he was done, he emailed the pictures to his boss, who quickly wrote back, "Who's the guy with the axe?" The foreman had no idea what he was talking about, but he noticed the boss had attached one of the pictures that he had just sent him. When he opened it, he nearly fainted. There, in the bowels of the ship, poking his head around a corner, was a faceless man wielding an axe. The foreman had spent over an hour in this hallway and never heard or saw this guy. The Navy searched the ship and never found this guy. They also reviewed security footage of the only entrance, and he never entered or left the ship. This is why you should always trust your parents. In 1990, a father and his 15-year-old son worked together at a gas station in Florida. One night, the boy was sitting outside on a break when he saw a crazy-looking woman walking towards the store. They were in a high-crime area and it was very late, so the boy turns around to look through the glass at his dad to see what he should do. His dad took one look at the woman and just shook his head, "No, do not help her." The woman walks up to the boy and says, "Hey, my car's broken down, can you give me a ride?" Before the boy can answer, his dad bursts outside and says, "You need to leave here immediately." Angrily, the woman turns and leaves, cussing them both out the whole way. 1 year later, the boy's in his room at home when his dad calls from the other room and says, "You gotta come in here and look at the TV." On the screen was the same woman from the gas station. Better known as Eileen Warnos, she was a serial killer who used to pick up her male victims at gas stations in Florida. She was later put to death. If someone offers you this, walk away. In 2016, a man was staying at his friend's cabin in the woods when he decided to go for an evening stroll. A little ways down the trail, he hears someone call out from behind his neighbor's house. He looks up and he sees this skinny guy pop out from behind the building who starts waving frantically at him to come over. Worried this guy could be in trouble, the man takes off running to assist. But when he gets close enough, the neighbor just offers him a fistful of Slim Jims and starts talking about how much he hates his wife. Sensing there was something wrong with this guy, he says no thank you to the Slim Jims and walks away. The next day, the man calls his friend who owned the cabin to ask him what the deal was with his weirdo neighbor. There was silence on the phone, and then his friend just says, "I don't have any neighbors." The police are called, and it turns out his neighbor was really some lunatic who had recently killed his wife and had been hiding out in the abandoned cabin next door. If you make it to the end, I'm sorry. In 2007, a woman was lying awake in her hotel bed when she started hearing a kid run up and down the hall laughing and making tons of noise. She considered going out and telling the kid to be quiet, but eventually just said whatever and fell asleep. The next morning she got up and asked her teenage daughter who was staying in the room next door if she had heard the kid, and she said yes, it was so annoying. That night the woman is back in bed trying to sleep when once again she hears the kid in the hall. Now feeling pretty annoyed herself, she starts walking to the front door to get a better listen when the footsteps stop right in front of her door and she hears the kid playing with the do not disturb sign. She leans into the peephole to get a better look, but the kid's gone. So she steps into the hallway and looks down the hall, and there's the kid at the far end, just standing there perfectly still.
Storytime, I got my boyfriend back for cheating on me by getting him arrested. It was the summer before my sophomore year in high school.
Just found out my boyfriend got another girl pregnant, and you know what? I don't care. Sounds like he's gonna be a dad. I'm just happy it ain't me he got pregnant, haha. Good luck to his baby mama though, she's gonna need it. He's upset that I'm happy about it. Told him congrats on his new family and to get out of my apartment. Fuck his feelings. Gonna go have fun getting drunk at the beach tomorrow. Consider yourself lucky you found out who he really was now instead of 20 years of marriage and 3 kids later. You dodged a bullet. Enjoy those drinks. We were talking about having kids at some point in the late future too. Now I see who he truly is and I'm not tied to him. Truly blessed.
I'm going to end my 10-year relationship because my husband is more devoted to winning against me than caring about me. The first 3 years were amazeballs. We did fun things together, we traveled, we had shared interests, we were loving to each other. In the last 7 years, his true personality has come out. He criticizes any thought I have. I don't like some food? I'm wrong. I like a sappy TV show? I'm wrong. It doesn't matter what it is, he will fight and fight over the dumbest things only for the satisfaction of winning. Most of those wins are just me giving up because I can't believe that where a dish should go in the dishwasher needs a 15-minute speech about how right he is about dish placement. We're in counseling now, and every appointment is his efforts to prove me wrong about something and never, ever about him trying to apply anything that the counselor has tried to teach us. I'm exhausted and I give up. 10 years of telling me I am worthless? Okay, you win. I will remove my worthless self from your life. And then I will finally breathe again.
My child has broken me. Sorry for the long post, first time posting, and on mobile. I met LS father M when I was 20 and he was 19. I won't get into detail, but it was an insanely abusive relationship. I know now he was a narcissist. There was no contact, no child support, and no family, so I struggled to raise my daughter by myself. When she was 7 I met my current husband A. All aspects of our little family were great. She loved A, they did everything together, he treated her like his own, he was the dad she always wanted. We had 2 kids a few years later, W and Z, and L was excited to have siblings. Things were great, until L's 12th birthday when she told me the only thing she wanted for her birthday was to meet M. I reached out to him assuming that I'd never hear back, but to my surprise his GF responded and said they'd love to get to know L. That in itself should have been a red flag and I should have just told her that I couldn't get in contact, but I felt like she deserved to meet him and form her own opinion. We met at a park a week later, M told her he hated kids and never wanted any and that she was a huge mistake. I wanted to completely cut him off at that point, but she wanted to keep seeing him. So, we set up a bi-weekly day where M and his GF would come to our house and spend time with L. However, 2 months in L decided that she wanted M around more, but that A needed to go so that M, L, and myself could be a family. L's solution, to tell the school that ASA her. Of course, Child Protective Services shows up and A was arrested, and because I defended my husband CPS took my children from me and placed them in foster care. I went broke fighting with everything I had to prove I was a fit parent, and 9 months in when Elle realized that M was not gonna save her from foster care she decided to tell CPS she was lying and my kids all came home to me. It was almost another year before I was allowed to come back to the house, as we had to do intensive family therapy. In all that, we had lost our house and ended up in a 2BR trailer, and with 5 people is not ideal, but we made do. After everything, M kept his distance, but was still texting L regularly. M would only see L maybe once every 3 to 4 months or so. For the next couple years everything was fine, except randomly CPS would show up, usually when L wasn't getting her way, but they would leave when they saw nothing was actually wrong. Until recently, L is struggling in school and told me in April that she wanted to drop out. I told her there was no way I was going to allow that. She doesn't bring it up again. I thought we were good. But towards the end of school L tells me she wants to spend the summer with M. I was hesitant. But, the last Friday of school here comes CPS. They need to talk to me about LS abuse and as abuse. I was in shock. So I agreed to let L spend the summer with M, and CPS magically disappears from my life. L proceeds to not only ignore me all summer but turn the only family I have against me. She has been telling everyone about how abusive I and A are, and she's so glad to be free now. I found out via LS BFF that apparently M told L that if she lived with him full time she could drop out of school and start her actual life. So about 2 weeks ago, I got a call from the school that seemed out of the blue saying that I needed to sign off on my child being unenrolled. I called M and L to figure out what was going on, and was basically met with I either do this or CPS will be back to my house, which honestly every time they show up, I have a panic attack, because it's a trauma response at this point. L has now told me she has no interest in ever coming back home, but that she still expects me to buy her a car for her 17th birthday and pick her up every week so that she can see her siblings. M lives an hour plus away. A says I need to just let her go. He loves her, but it's not worth the constant battle and trauma they're causing me, and of course he's concerned about the repercussions of me fighting it. I don't want this affecting my younger two. Thankfully they were too young to remember it the first time. Today, M called me to ask how I was, which I know is a load of shit. He seems all too happy, almost 17 years later, continuing the abuse. He knows my kids are my everything, and he's turned my daughter against me, and both of them use CPS as a weapon. L also FaceTimed W and Z and told them I kicked her out because I don't love her anymore. I don't want to just let my daughter go, but at the same time I can't keep enduring this emotional trauma. I truly believe L has BPD, but because of her age they won't diagnose her, but she has all the signs of it and family history. I also haven't even begun to explain all of it. There's just too many things, but the things she has done have to my family have completely broken me. Sad, depressed, don't even begin to explain the emotions I feel, but it's not good. I love her and want to help her. If you actually read this far, thank you. I've been having panic attacks and crying for days, and I just really needed to vent, and I don't feel like I can talk to anyone about this.
Anon, the long-distance lover. I met my first love at 11 years old when I was living in the Philippines. We got together at 12, but then broke up when my family moved to Ireland. At 15, we wrote letters to each other and got back together again and stayed together for the next 5 years. Not a happy ending, though. He ended up cheating on me. I also have to add that I wasn't allowed to have a boyfriend because my parents were very strict, so it was a lot of sneaking around and asking my cousins for help so we could meet up. Danielle, the check yes or no. My first love was a boy named John in elementary school. I thought he was the cutest boy in all of the 5th grade. I would try to play with him through recess and talk to him in class, but he just wouldn't give me the time of the day. One day, I was brave enough to write him a letter, literally a Dear John letter. I asked one of his friends if they could give it to him, and they did. I remember standing on the other side of the playground, waiting for him to read the letter, and I watched him take the letter and throw it in the garbage. I was devastated. My little 11-year-old heart was broken, and I vowed to never speak or look at him ever again. Roughly 10 years later, a group of us contacted each other on Facebook and decided to meet up for a reunion. I saw John again for the first time after nearly a decade, and we made up for lost time, catching up with each other and what we had been up to after high school. We dated briefly after that, but it didn't work out. We were both in different places mentally. Although we are both parents now and just Facebook friends, I still consider him my first love and my first heartbreak. Megan the brace-locking romance. My first love was this boy Josh who dated all my friends. It was a very Pen 15 situation. Finally, it was my turn to be his girlfriend. So, one night when my father was sleeping, we snuck out to the roof of my apartment building and kissed. It was my first kiss. Of course, being that we were both 13 years old, when we kissed our braces locked and we couldn't separate ourselves from each other. We were stuck together. By the time we separated, my dad and the super busted us on the rooftop. I was grounded for a week, but still snuck phone calls to my first love in the bathroom at night and sat with him at lunch until he dated someone else. I knew because he sent her a note in homeroom. Young love is hard. Lisa the short king. My first love was named Joey, and he lived around the corner from me. We grew up together and we always had a mutual flirtation. When we started middle school, he asked me out on a date. Finally. I had a growth spurt really early on, and by the time I was 13, I was really tall. He hadn't had his yet, and was 4 inches shorter than me. But that didn't matter to me. When we went out on our first date, the usher made me buy an adult movie ticket for myself and a child ticket for him. Now, the reason why they made me buy the ticket is because they thought that I was his mother or older sibling because I was so much taller than him. Anyway, I was totally humiliated because it ruined the vibe. But, that didn't stop us from dating for the next 2 years. Alicia the spoiled salad love. I had a date with my crush in junior high school. We were going to hang out at the local arcade. Before I went, I was eating dinner with my family and I shook a container of salad dressing and the whole thing exploded all over my hair and my outfit. I tried to shower and change my clothes, but I still smelled like Italian salad dressing. The whole time we were out he was asking me if I smelled what he was smelling. I said no. Needless to say, we never went out again because I smelled like a salad on our first date. Jess.
A brief romance. One of those days, when it rains unceasingly and I have to hurry up in the subway to catch the bus to go to my workplace. My hair looked disheveled as I tried to pull up the hood of my raincoat over my head. Water dripped from my hair. Suddenly my phone rang. I looked a bit alarmed as I was expecting some colleague of mine who would call me to adjust her classes. Thankfully it was not one of them. It was my cousin calling me up. Her name was Tina, as my siblings and I lovingly called her. She was all of 26, tall, dark with a warm smile and sensitive eyes which looked eternally blissful. All my siblings and I were married. We had arranged marriages and were living comfortably, so now it was her turn to get married. She was working as a receptionist in a hotel located near the airport. Didibhai, I have married, so who is the lucky guy? His name is Krishna. He is a driver by profession. He drives his uncle's car, who happens to be my boss. Her ecstatic voice made me shudder. I could no longer keep track of what she was uttering. A driver by profession, my cousin had committed a blunder. What more could I say when there were so many young men with lucrative pay packages who were interested in her? She had chosen a taxi driver over them. So, where are you staying? In my in-laws' place. Take care, I ended abruptly. There were pangs of despair pricking in my heart. My cousin was a girl having a lavish taste. She wore jeans which cost 2,000 rupees. My uncle happened to be a LIC agent, who had spent all his money on his dear daughter's education and upbringing. He was a man of strict principles. Other than that, he took special pride in the fact that he was a Brahmin. I really did not know how he would be able to tolerate his daughter's discreet behavior. The incident, or accident as he would term it, would ruin him. 2 hours later, after reaching my workplace, I called my aunt. She was crying over her daughter's betrayal. Krishna had always visited the household as a friend. Never had my aunt suspected anything existing between them other than friendship. She would be doubly accused by her husband now. First, for trusting her daughter unquestioningly. Next, for hiding the affair from her husband. My uncle would never understand her wife's naivete. A squalor would perpetuate now, a big fight would break up in the house. My thoughts jammed in, I worried about my cousin's future. The day went on as usual. Although melancholic, I trudged my way to most of my classes with my chalk and register in hand. I shouted hoarsely like a professor in engineering college is supposed to do. I later came out and sighed if only my cousin had married an engineer. I spent 3 or 4 days quietly without talking with anyone. My aunt had lost her mother when she was 1 year old. Probably she deserved better in life, I thought, rather than seeing her daughter getting married to a low-caste taxi driver. I am a typically convent-educated person, so my schooling had taught me restraint rather than getting involved in fits of passion. I supported my aunt over my cousin. Autumn leaves, I sarcastically meditated on her sudden marriage to this boy. 2 since Tina's marriage, 1 week had passed now. I had tried to hold all my premonitions regarding their marriage. My uncle was an angry and emotionally devastated man. Tina knew her marriage would not be accepted easily by her family. She had married in a Kali temple and moved to her in-laws' place. They were businessmen who owned 2 shops and a 2-storied house. Tina had been welcomed to the house by her mother-in-law, but her father-in-law was adamant. He was of opinion that Krishna had married without consent, so he should try to provide for his wife instead of depending upon them. They had thus no option other than moving to my uncle's place. Krishna's uncle had removed both of them from their job where they had previously worked. They both were now looking for a job. The young couple's struggle had begun together. With whatever little savings they had accumulated, they had rented a small house. They came every day for their meal to my aunt's place. Meanwhile, my uncle shouted at both of them. He blamed both of them as irrational. He even tried to convince his daughter to leave Krishna. But Tina remained firm and unmoved. She said she loved Krishna and come what may they would stick together. After some weeks, the matter had settled down, I thought. I hardly found the time to visit them. My mind had moved from a state of fear to stage of gentle reconciliation. We were hoping for things to work out for themselves. One day, while I was fast asleep, my phone started ringing. As I picked up the phone, my mother's voice cried, "Tina has committed suicide. Your aunt is ill. She has been rushed to the hospital." I was shocked and petrified. On that fatal day, my uncle had scolded her and told her to stop eating at their place. She was angry and felt insulted and had walked out grudgingly. Nobody had followed her. She had slipped quietly into the house, taken a cord, fastened it to the fan, and hanged herself. Her husband had found it 15 minutes late. She was already dead by that time. I do not know what drove her to death. Was it love or reality that kept weighing on her soul? I knew no answer. I only know what happens when we fail to empathize. We end up losing our loved ones. Once again, it was raining today, and as I was getting drenched, I just hoped it washed away my tears and cleansed my heart.